Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we're going to give you a brief and completely non-comprehensive walking tour of CEC, the Combat Engagement Center. It's been a while since we've talked about the individual equipment in here, if we ever have done anything this kind of comprehensive. But the Combat Engagement Center is one of the best restored and best interpreted spaces on this ship, which really incredible given how just absolutely gutted it was when the museum got it. We don't have too much in the terms of pictures from back then, but a lot of the major equipment was removed. And so the museum, prior to me starting working here, not trying to take any credit for this, the museum did a tremendous amount of work recovering that equipment and then getting it to play facsimile displays. And that's one of the biggest questions. But part of why we're doing this video is because people ask about this space so frequently. It's a compelling space. But the most common question after that is, do these things work? And the short answer is no. Most of the equipment is completely gutted of all of its internal components when we were able to get it from the Navy, or if it came with the ship, likewise. So most of this stuff is run by flat screens in there that are running to little players, which are all next door here in SSES, the Ship's Signals Exploitation Space. So, Combat Engagement Center is a space that's added in the 1980s when all the new missiles and all the new electronics are being added. They needed a space that they could use for that equipment, and look at all of this electrical cabling in the overhead. They didn't want to run all of that down to the former combat space, CIC, or the Combat Information Center, because it's down inside the armored part of the ship. It means cutting away large parts of the ship to be able to get all this equipment down there, really long runs for the electrical. It overcomplicated the issue. But they had this big open space on the O2 level of the superstructure, unarmored, planned to not be used in the 80s. This had been part of the Admiral's stateroom suite of spaces, and the Navy didn't want to spend twice the original cost of building these ships just for them to be used as Admiral's yachts. So they remove all flag spaces from New Jersey. The other Iowas got variations on this, but having done that, they had then created the space for this. Now the problem is, this is a battleship, and this is the most modern, most important combat systems on the battleship. Those should be in the most heavily armored part of the ship, like the Combat Information Center down below. So the Navy decides there's no way this high up in the superstructure we can add 16 inches of armor plate to it. Then it just doesn't make sense any way you cut it. Even 12 inches of armor plate. But they do add 2 inches of armor plate, which is fantastic splinter protection. It's HY80 high yield steel, which is the more modern equivalent of STS, which the ship was originally built with, special treatment steel. And it's the kind of stuff that's used on submarine pressure hulls. So they install all the equipment, and then they basically weld onto the exterior on all sides, including the roof, this 2-inch HY80 steel. And you can see an example of that with the new door that they added here. It's an armored door, it's a secured door. This space is one of the skiff spaces, specially compartmented information spaces on the ship. So there would likely be an armed Marine out these doors at all times. You only get in there if you were supposed to be there. So, having given all of that background information, let's head inside. We're just going to rotate the room from here on the left side, the port side, and just go all the way around. So come on over here first. It is a little dark in this space by design. This space is for staring at computer screens, and as you can see from many of the screens around me, these are 1980s era computer screens, mostly designed in the 60s and 70s and still in use in the 80s and 90s, and in some cases still in use to today. But because of that, they've got like these really primitive, by today's standards, green screens by and large. And so the lighting in here was usually kept at blue lighting, was usually kept very dim. So the lighting in here is the best we can. It is by design like that. Right here, you can see the armored fire control tube that runs through the entire superstructure all the way up to the rangefinder at the top, and it's just a cabling trunk. So there's a ton of wires in there to transmit signals from the rangefinder down to plotting rooms and other places, and to get power up to there. That is the center line of the space. It's worth pointing out that New Jersey's CEC looks completely different from the other Iowas. They originally installed two roughly similar variants. New Jersey and Iowa had theirs built to a first design, which includes having a bulkhead right here to partition SSES out from here. This space is really small for the amount of work that's happening in here. So by the time Missouri and Wisconsin are being reactivated a few years later, they redesigned the space, removing that bulkhead entirely and having this room go all the way to the side. Then, near the end of the ship's career, probably during our 1987 yard period, they make some major modifications to New Jersey's CEC that Iowa never receives because she's the first one taken out of service in the 80s and 90s. So New Jersey's is unique, Iowa's is unique, and a good look at what New Jersey would have looked like earlier on in her career. And Missouri's and Wisconsin, well, they're all unique. Missouri's and Wisconsin's more or less look similar, although Wisconsin got some more modern equipment. New Jersey's crew did some change, or Missouri's crew did some changes. Like, all these ships end up being different. So one of the new pieces of equipment that's added, well, look at all these electrical cables again. Remember how hard it is to run those down below. One of the new pieces that's added during this time period is this computer console right here, TP, which is the Tomahawk Engagement Planning Exercise Evaluator. Essentially, before you expend a multi-million-dollar Tomahawk, plug your solution into this, and it will give you as output the percentage chance of striking that target. And your rules of engagement will likely include that you cannot expend one of these missiles unless it has X chance of hitting the target. So this is one of the steps in firing a Tomahawk to see if you can get a good shot. Coming around, we have a little desk-type chart table here. You'll notice that there are a lot of chairs in this space. The majority of people in the room are actually standing. Most of the work done here is standing. So some of the operators have seats, but like the desk here that we're using as a chart table right now is a standing desk. Coming around, you see the first of our radar repeaters. There are 5 of these in the space. This is where we're getting readouts from the radar antennas up on top of the tripod mast. That's going to help us engage targets, detect incoming targets that are engaging us, that sort of stuff. It's the whole point of this space, is to have a number of these radar repeaters. So these ones that are sitting more upright are the surface search sets, as opposed to this one, which is sitting more like this. That's an air search set. So we got 3 of these air search sets in the room, 2 of these surface search sets. With each of these radars, you'll also see one of these things. Looks like a really weird digital clock. These are IFF interrogators. IFF is identification friend or foe. So we're getting some pips on the radar screen. Is that friendly or not? Well, it's putting out an electronic signal, and we can tell based on that signal, because it's being interrogated by the box here with the readout here, that yeah, that's a friendly asset, probably don't shoot that down, or that's a civilian asset, definitely don't shoot that down, or, you know, that's enemy, this is a time of war, that is a legitimate target to engage. Coming around here, we've already talked about this being the air search set. This air search set actually has the controls for the antenna up above, so this is where you could energize the whole thing and get it rotating and things like that. Again, all of these readouts on the screens are just facsimiles that we created. The radar that we have spinning up above, we have it rotating. It is not radiating. We do not have the capability to radiate anymore, and that's a good thing. Continuing around the room, this is where our CWIS is controlled from, close-in weapon system for Iowa-class battleships. In the 80s, they got 4 of the Block 0 phalanx, a 20mm Gatling gun system. And what you see here, this whole thing was completely missing. So we had to make our own rack for it. We had to acquire these parts, and they came off of a local control unit. It shouldn't be a local control unit in here. It should be like a main control station. We do not have one of those automatic main control stations here to control a 4-gun phalanx battery. So something was better than nothing. This had just been empty for 20 years. So our volunteers, we were able to acquire this on an open house. We still haven't been able to find the right kind, and they've been able to put some lighting behind it and make it look really cool, like the rest of the space. Much of the equipment that you see in this space is still actively used by the modern Navy. We still use phalanxes, we still use Slick 32s, we still use tomahawks and harpoons. If you went into a modern combat space on a Navy ship, it would not look very different from this one. And so some of that equipment is rather difficult to get, and some of that equipment are on ships that are just now reaching the end of life. So we're just starting to get the opportunity to go and take parts off of those during open houses. So, and again, the space was pretty heavily gutted. So in some cases, we've got the exact right thing back in its place. In some cases, we've got something close enough so the tour guides can tell you this is the phalanx panel, and you can, ooh, ah, but it would look a little bit different. We've got a picture here of what we would actually be looking for. Coming around, I like how they grouped things on here. You've got your air search set, you've got your anti-aircraft weapons, and you've got another line in that defense. This is the Slick 32 console. That is an electronic countermeasure. So essentially, this is what's controlling the antennas up in the superstructure that are detecting radar signals from incoming missiles, aircraft, things like that, determining if it's friend or foe, and then trying to jam it if it is unfriendly. So it's our first line of defense. If somebody shoots a missile at us, we can try and jam that missile so its radar-seeking head cannot see the ship anymore. If that doesn't work, then you go to the phalanx right there. So all of this suite right here is all for the anti-aircraft stuff. You'll also see around the space a number of televisions. This particular one is the infrared readout from our RPV drone. So this is another extremely light addition to the space. This is actual footage of one of the drones flown from one of the Iowa-class battleships during the Gulf War. So not specific to New Jersey, but really fantastic infrared footage. I think it's a Missouri drone tracking an Iraqi food truck stopping at a series of bunkers that they're then, now they can see the bunkers because the truck has stopped there, and they're plotting those as positions that are about to be destroyed later on, which is perfect use for the drone. So this seems like the sort of thing where, where else in this ridiculously crowded room do we have space for it? Yeah, throw it up there. We've got some other TVs around. We'll talk about those later on. Here we've got more of a communications desk. Sometimes the commanding officer is in this space in combat. Sometimes he's on the bridge or somewhere else. So in order to communicate outside with this space that is essentially the eyes of the battleship, we've got a sailor who's here, and it's their job to report that information on to other parts of the ship. So you've got a lot of the internal communications, and you've got one of at least 3 of the red radio telephones that's in here. So if we have to talk to another ship, those feed through a device called the Coke machine, because it's the size, shape, and color of a Coke machine. And the guys down in the radio room program whatever channels friendly ships are operating on, and you can pick up that phone and just talk bridge to bridge with them, essentially, or combat engagement center to bridge, as the case may be. We've also got this little island that comes out, again, unique to New Jersey, that has more workspace area. As we come around the room, you can see the first pair of Tomahawk cruise missile control consoles. We believe that these consoles here are more for programming and launching the missiles, and there's 2 other consoles elsewhere in the room that would like more or less take over monitoring those missiles in flight. We carry 32 missiles, which during the 80s when we're retrofitting these missiles on, that's roughly twice the normal battery that other ships are getting. Some are getting 8, some are getting 16. We've got 32, which is the most any ships are carrying until the vertical launch Ticonderoga class cruisers come online. So we've got basically a double bank of these. This is one of those things that the Navy fixed with the larger CEC on the Missouri and Wisconsin. They basically took these, threw them on that wall, and put all 4 Tomahawk consoles next to each other. They're not as widely separated as you're going to see in our space. Coming around, we've got a couple of civilian off-the-shelf computers that would have run a couple of kind of prototype programs that were being developed in the 80s. One is called POST, one is called JOTS. Essentially, these were early attempts to computer network ships. We can see targets out to maybe 20 miles, maybe 50 miles with our radars, but our missiles can engage targets hundreds or even thousands of miles away, depending on the exact variant of the missile. So we rely very heavily on other ships being able to find targets for us, not just ships, satellites, aircraft, submarines, not even necessarily American. They might be allied of various types. So these systems, among other things that they were doing, help you see objects that have already been plotted by other assets. Let's head back into this corner real quick. Let's duck back here behind the wall where we've got several important pieces of equipment. The most important, perhaps, is this guy right here, which is the air conditioner for the space. That is absolutely critical for keeping the computer equipment in here able to function properly. It's not for the crew, it's for the equipment. You can also see that these are the status boards. The status boards are written on from the backside here by a sailor who is trained to write backwards. And this way, I'm not standing in front of the thing while I'm writing on it so that the tactical action officer or the captain can't see it. I am back here. You can't really see me through these backlit signs. So I'm just writing on here and everything's going well. You use a grease pencil so that you can wipe it off. Also back here is a paper shredder, which is pretty important. You've got a lot of classified documentation that might be coming through this space, whether it's paperwork, whether it's printouts from your missile firing solution or your Link 11 system. And so this is like one of those really good government shredders that basically atomizes the paper. It doesn't cut into strips that the FBI can then come back and match up like in all the TV shows. It just turns it into white dust. And then another important thing back here is this guy, the safe. It actually belongs right here on this base, but we had to move it out of the way to access the air conditioner to repair that, and we weren't going to move it back. This part back here doesn't have any light. It's not on the tour route, so we aren't going to move it back because we'll have to fix the air conditioner again. It's 100 degrees today in approximately 6 hours. But the safe is pretty important because we have things like launch codes and nuclear keys and things like that. So some of the things that would be in this safe here. Also back in the corner we have a couple of our printers, again probably associated with the Link 11 system. All right. Here's another one of those printers that I was talking about. This one's been opened up to get its paper cartridge changed out. Our volunteers are actively maintaining this space, so you might see a couple of the things are currently off. It's because they're working on them. This thing is another one of the newest pieces in here, the tape recorder. This was added very late in the ship's career after USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian passenger airliner that was flying nearby and not responding to communications. So the Iranians, of course, called foul play. The Americans said they did everything according to the books, but there was no documentation of that. So these things, which are essentially the same as a black box, they're recorders for the room, are installed to record the commands, the decisions, the discussions that are happening in here. So if a situation like that were to happen again, hopefully it never does, but if a situation like that happens again, that there is some proof of the decision-making process that happens, and so that liability can be discovered. Did we actually attempt to call that airliner? Did they actually not respond? Like, were proper protocols followed? And if not, then we can discipline people. Coming around, you'll see a number of racks like this around the space. They are for EEBDs, or emergency escape breathing devices. It's essentially a hood with about 15 minutes of air in it. You see them in lots of places around the ship, but usually in like Kleenex box looking mounts. These spaces are so widely peopled that they bent up some of these steel mounts for them, probably specifically for this ship in Long Beach. It seems like a very shipyard fabricated sheet metal thing, not like we went out to a contractor and bought dozens of them. So coming around, here you can see we've got 2 more air search sets. This area functions essentially as the air traffic control center for the battleship. So if there are friendly assets in the area, we may well have the best command and control capabilities of any of the ships around. And so we can essentially not take control in that sense, but we can be using our sensors to help guide them on the targets. If we are using them to protect us against an attack, then we can act as a fighter direction center and give commands from here. So you've got radios, you've got internal communications, and a couple of screens. Through here is TFCC, or the Task Force Command Center, where an admiral staff would be. We've got a dead reckoning tracer right here. We've got all these radar screens that show the ship at the middle, and then we're plotting other ships around them. But how do we know where the ship is? So this is your, basically, Great Depression era TomTom, your GPS navigation device. It's just an analog computer that you plug in a couple of variables into: the ship's speed, wind speed, water speed, things like that, and it will move this illuminated bug around the screen, showing where you are, and you can trace out on the onion skin where you are. Coming around the space, we've got more status boards. All the status boards are angled so that this spinning barber chair here can see them. That would be where the commanding officer would be, or the tactical action officer, depending on which one is in command of the space at any given time. So from there in the middle of the room, they can swivel around and they can see all of these things. Behind it, we have another one of our surface search sets, the second one in the space. Our other Tomahawk consoles. And over there, you could see above our Tomahawks, we've got some flat screens on that play footage of this space in use. What it would really look like is more like this with these black and white screens. The ship actually had cameras mounted around it, particularly at missile launchers and things like that, so that the guys in here, remote to those missiles that are controlling it, get a feed out of, has the thing opened? Is the missile actually firing, or did it not fire? These things do have misfires, multi-million-dollar misfires. So you've got those sorts of readouts. And then, of course, we come to the last piece in the room, and that is the Harpoon anti-ship missile battery controls. Again, we've got a double battery of those compared to other ships. Normally, you might see 8 of them mounted on a ship. We've got 16, and so we've got 2 controllers here instead of the normal 1. And so we'll wrap up with, we've already looked at the overhead, which is just absolutely covered with either ventilation for that air conditioning unit or all of those wires. So now, let's finish it out. This is a box after all, with the deck. The deck is covered with rubberized linoleum, which you see in most of the spaces on the ship where there are electronics. So that rubber helps isolate static charge, electrical charge, things like that. If I'm working on one of these pieces of electrical equipment, that's going to help keep me from getting electrocuted. That's going to keep me safe. That's going to keep the other sailors around me safe. So there is a look at all 6 sides of the cube that is the Combat Engagement Center, perhaps the most important space on the battleship in the 1980s, and arguably the best restored space in the entire museum. I really love this space from an interpretation standpoint because, like, you go into a gun turret or an engine room, those are virtually unchanged throughout the ship's career. You don't get any indication that this ship had a long service life that is nearly contemporary. But you come in here and you can't help but realize that this is not World War II equipment. This ship served to the modern day. And it really helps keep this museum relevant because we can show off contemporary equipment. So let us know what your favorite space is on the ship when you take a tour of this ship or other museum ships that you've been on. And maybe we'll make another deep dive video like this of that space in the future. Let us know if you think there's another space on board that is better restored and maintained than this space, where the parts have been collected by our volunteers, installed and maintained by our volunteers, and all of these working effects done by our volunteers. If you'd like to come out and volunteer and help, there's a link in the description below, an email address to reach out if you're interested. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum and our ongoing restoration of spaces. One day, every room on the ship will look as good as CEC. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.